Hello everyone, and welcome once again to the Heir's Lair. I'm your host, Jonathan Taylor. In case you're wondering why this video, the last of the year, is filmed in this particular style instead of my usual setup, well that's because I tried filming this video with my usual setup, and the video ran a bit too long for my camera to capture. So for that reason, I am instead switching over to this, hoping it works out. And what is it that I'm going to be talking about? What is it that my usual camera couldn't handle? Well, I wanted to talk a bit about the 10 best books that I've read this year. So, yeah, ergo the title as well. Important distinction: this is about the books I've read this year, regardless of when it is they've come out, because that is what I have first-hand experience with. And first of all, and second of all, even if I would have only read the books that came out this year over the course of this year, I would really not have been able to cover all of them. So for the sake of reference, this is a list of the 10 best books I have read this year in ascending order of quality. So we're going least good or worst to most good or best. That being said, this is again isn't a list of everything I read, just the 10 best. So if your book isn't here, well, sorry, but if your book is here, you have my permission to list the fact that you've been mentioned here among your achievements list or honors or whatever have you, assuming you actually have that. Over time, I'll be employing certain props, and by props I mean books that I have physical copies of, which, spoiler alert, all books that I have physical copies of have somehow made their way into this year-end list. And also I have my year-end list down here in written form. So if you see me glancing down, you'll know why. Anyway, with that introduction out of the way, let's get started and allow me to actually present my favorite books of the year, which coincidentally, all of which were rated at least a 4 out of 5. Starting at number 10, we have The Mermaid and the Pearl by Rosalind Breyer, one of 3 books that came out this year. And this book is part of the Realm of Darkness collection, which is a collection of urban fantasy or just general fantasy romances. And once again, I have to congratulate Rosalind for being able to weave together a story within a whimsical world, something that is both fantastical but still approachable to her audience, which is a balance a lot of people seem to struggle with, but to her it's almost second nature. Also, she does outstanding character work. Outstanding character work that almost makes me ignore all of the typical faults fantasy romances fall into. Almost. I was very tempted to give this book a 3 out of 5 when I first read it, but then the last 10% saved it when it was revealed that this book actually has a place within her larger bibliography and wasn't just something she wrote for a collection in order to gain some quick exposure. So she definitely has some investment into this, and she's definitely willing to expand that. And I like that she trusts herself and that she trusts her work to that extent. And also the fact that I've been able to revisit the characters from A Sea of Pearls and Leaves, which I constantly recommend from her, is that's also a bonus. I'm not going to deny that. At number 9, I have Merchants of Knowledge and Magic by Erica McCorkle. Another book that came out this year, and in case you're wondering, no, the third book on this list that came out this year will not be number 8. It's going to be a little higher up. We'll get to it. As for this book, Merchants of Knowledge and Magic, I have to say it's kind of the biggest disappointment of the year. I was fully expecting this to be a 5 out of 5 and chart topper. Like, I fully expected this to be to be at the top of my year-end list. And to be fair, it really looked like it would be. at least as I was reading it, because it had a lot of cool characters. It had a lot of very interesting worlds and a lot of good setup. And the societies that she put together were quite interesting as well. And observing their development, piecing it together, was was not gonna lie, quite fascinating. At least for about 40% of the way through the book, because after she reached that 40%, she started fumbling her way through the character work, which left her admittedly pretty strong plot to basically carry the rest. And while that worked, while she was able to, you know, carry the plot throughout, have the plot carry the rest of the story with all of the elements that were built around it, it still isn't really as good as it could have been. And for that reason, Merchants of Knowledge and Magic is only at number 9. At number 8, I have The Crown of Bones by Rosalind Breyer. Rosalind, congratulations. You are the first female author and the first indie author to have more than one book in the same year-end list. And this book, in particular, her debut, is is quite interesting, especially when you consider that it is her debut, and somehow she manages to avoid some of the pitfalls that I've noticed in her, in her other books. The society that she has managed to flesh out within the first 20% of this 20% of this book is quite interesting. I'm not gonna lie. And then the rest of the book, which has the adventure and the twists and turns and all the challenges that are placed in front of the characters, that was very interesting. Even though it's obvious that they were borrowed from other places, the synergy and the escalation of the plot that occurs, with the way these challenges have been put together, is quite fascinating to read through, and I very very much found myself enjoying the ride. It is a very enjoyable book, and it has a lot of quality to it, which is why it made its way all the way up to number 8. At number 7, let me check on my list. Yeah, it's true. At number 7, I've got Be Water, My Friend by Shannon Lee. This book is actually quite complex if you really think about it. It's about a woman coming to terms with the legacy of her father, masquerading as a self-help book, masquerading as a series of philosophical observations wrapped up in a biography. And what I find very interesting, and what was continuously refreshing as I read it, was how she was able to switch between these planes in which this book existed. How you could go from biography to observation to conclusion, and and back again. It very accurately represents what I think a lot of people go through when they realize that their parents aren't just not just that their parents are also people, but just what kind of people they are, what kind of strengths they actually possess, and how the environment around them made them to some extent or contributed to who they became. And that is very interesting to realize and to follow, as Shannon herself is realizing that, and I can't help but find it very admirable, and it's also very interesting to see her develop in real time, because even though her first chapters are kind of awkward, towards the end she becomes very smooth and very involving, and I can't help but admire her progress, and admire how she is able to change her perspectives as she is inviting her readership to also change their perspective. So yeah, for that reason, her biography of her father has made its way up to number 7 on this list. At number 6, I've got SRU, The Birth and Maladies of a Political Party. This book, I'll remind you, is a collection of essays that has been coordinated by Dan Lungu and Anka Goja, and it consists of several essays written not just by those two, but also by various other current and former members of this political party. And reading through their accounts, reading through their experiences, reading through the essays that they wrote about their time within the party, and about the experiences and their analyses of these experiences within the party, has been quite eye-opening. Even though I've been on the inside of this party for quite a while and have been able to observe it for for some time, I still find their observations to be very poignant and very interesting to follow through. I'm pretty sure everyone who manages to read this will find something that they would gravitate towards. At number 5, I've got The Empress of Beasts and Mist by Ginevra Mancinelli. I'm going from the youngest book on this list, both in terms of when it was released and when I review it, to the oldest book in terms of when I review it. Because if I were to go chronologically by when they were released, I am pretty sure some books that will come up a little later are a little older. This one is the first one I reviewed this year that also shows up on this list. And in fact, right after I reviewed it, during my review, I said it would be in the Year's End list, but I didn't really think it would be this high. I didn't really think it would really make it all the way to number 5. But I guess I was pleasantly surprised. And really, it was quite obvious that it would be, because Ginevra has a great control, or a great perspective, great attitude towards her characters. She understands what makes them tick, and understands their complexity, understands their visions, and understands what it is that they are after. And bringing her readership into that perspective is something she has become. Is something she is quite good at, and her capabilities within that field are honestly astounding, if I may say so myself. So I've very much enjoyed reading through this book and also thinking about it. It does suffer a bit due to the way she kind of had some problems marrying the complexities of plot with the finer details of how the world is supposed to be put together. But oh well, that's something that happens. It's why she's just number 5. I'm pretty sure if I would have read the main series, of which this is a prequel, before I read this, I might have been more capable of figuring out what exactly is supposed to be going on. But for now, this is about as high as it'll go. Stuff happens. At number 4, I've got Iron Widow by Jiran Jaishao. This book is pretty much the highest possible 4 I could rate, because it is in many ways very interesting. Like the setting that Jiran was able to, Jiran Jaishao, I'm not really sure what her first name is. Their first name is not really. So the world they were able to construct was quite interesting, going from the small scale to the big scale and large scale and and so on. Looking at the kinds of characters who would be who would populate it and who would make sure everything works, figuring out the logic behind what makes everything work. All of that was very interesting and very intriguing in its own way. And then looking at the people involved within the story and figuring out how it is that they tick. That was that was also something I very much enjoyed, and that was also something that really worked, and that this author managed to put in a very symbolic but also very digestible fashion, which again was very engaging, very enticing to absorb and almost immerse oneself in. There were some hiccups within the book, which is why I've rated it a 4 instead of a 5. But still, I can't help but admire just how just how well put together and just how interesting this book is. So for that reason, it made it all the way up to number 4, just shy of the podium. At number 3, the bronze medal goes to The Children of the Ecosystem by Ilinca Mănescu. This year has seen both the highest possible number 4 I could give to Iron Widow, as well as the lowest possible 5 out of 5 that I could give, namely to The Children of the Ecosystem. I am pretty sure that someone who has read both of them will perhaps think that Iron Widow is actually better than The Children of the Ecosystem. In which case, I'm not gonna comment anything about it. I'm not gonna say that is wrong. I'm gonna say that is simply an opinion. What motivates my opinion to put The Children of the Ecosystem above Iron Widow is mainly the pound for pound argument. Namely, the book is quite a bit shorter than than a lot of the other books that have that have made their way up onto this list, but it manages to be at least as intriguing. Like the world building is very smooth. The way it manages to get into a character's head is very I'd almost say elegant. It is very very principled, very intimate. Like it almost absorbs the reader within the story it is trying to say, which is quite amazing to do. And also there is a great deal of elegance and grace in the presentation of this book. Like even the ugly parts of this world are presented with a lot of tact and a lot of empathy. And that is something that is definitely at least to me made an impact, and that I can't help but find admirable. For that reason, this book made it all the way up the list and into the top 3. At number 2, I've got Kelsey by Casey Kells. Last year's list, there was kind of a battle for second place. This year was definitely a battle for first place, and I have to say there is not a lot that really separates number 1 and number 2. And regardless, I'm gonna talk about what makes the number 2 quite distinctive, and a lot of that comes from the author's own candidness and her own willingness to be raw, to be blunt, and to at times be unpleasant, if it means that she is sharing the story that she wants to. And it is that level of bravery, that level of sticking to her guns and sticking to her experience and being willing to present them, even though it's so graphic, even though it's so painful. That is something that really sticks with me, and that is something that I find all the more admirable in that case. Then again, it's not all doom and gloom, because she does manage to make her readers care for her or for the younger version of herself in a variety of other ways, a variety of other interesting ways, where you really get to know who she is and what defines her in both of the major stages of her life, and you really get to see what made that particular separation between these stages. It's so important and so meaningful to the way in which she relates to she relates to the world around her, and how she was able to then claw herself back out of the hole that she has found herself. I can't help but admire that, and also the presentation. As I've said, it is raw, but it is so for a good reason. It serves a point, and while that point is ugly, it is not gratuitous. Like she knows what she's doing when she is writing about this. And finally, at number 1, the gold medal goes to Mouse by Art Spiegelman. Now, I have to say this book isn't really as personal. It doesn't really seek to connect to its readership with the same level of detail and really candidness that Casey's book was capable of. And admittedly, that is the one thing that Kelsey has over Mouse. But Mouse was better at telling a similar story for a broader category of people, and it was better capable of exploring a similar trauma over, at a level of an entire society, and really exploring what it takes for a whole bunch of people to see others as being maybe not necessarily worthy of being ridiculed, but them being ridiculed no longer mattering. As in, how do you trivialize brutality, and what does it mean when you trivialize brutality? What does it mean to the people who are going through the brutality that you claim doesn't matter? That is a subject that even though it isn't explored with the same tact, is explored with it is explored with an interesting level of depth and broadness, and also its aftermath is explored in a much more brutal and a much longer, more extensive perspective, and it is really that perspective that elevates this story when compared to pretty much anything else I've read. It sticks with you. I'll say that much. And for that reason, for being able to share some very painful experiences in a more direct way, I have to say Mouse deserves the title of the best book I've read this year. And yeah, that was my video. Thank you for your attention. And sorry if it went a little bit dark there towards the end. It's not really my fault that the books I've chosen and I've chosen to read this year ended up being very dark and very good. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will like it as well. If you have anything you'd like to add to this video, either to any of the books mentioned or the way in which they're ordered, well then that's what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, please subscribe. Ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. My own book, Heir to the Empire Next Generation, is available at most major book retailers under a master link in the description down below. Right past my social media links, which I would suggest you check out, should you choose to do so. Until next time, Happy New Year, and I am Jonathan Taylor, and this has been the Heir's Lair.